In a hot market, appraisals can come in low pretty often, and there's something that you can do called an appraisal waiver clause that you can add in your contract that will commit you to paying above the appraised value, but could make your offer stronger. What does all that mean? We'll talk about that coming up next. Hey, what's going on, friends? Dylan Donaka here with the Buy Big Island video blog, and this week we're going to talk about appraisal waiver clauses, and this is something that's coming up pretty often right now in this hot market that we're in, where you can put into your offer a clause saying that you will pay above the appraised value if the appraisal comes in low. And that is a good thing for you as a buyer because it makes your offer stronger, right? If your offer is the same price as another offer, but you're saying that if the appraisal comes in a little bit low, you're willing to pay above the appraised value, that seller may be more likely to go with your offer because they have some cushion. And in a hot market like we're in right now, where prices are going up rapidly, if an appraiser is using comps from 6 months ago, those comps may not reflect the current market value or what you're willing to pay as a buyer, and it may cause problems in your deal. So if you agree on a purchase price of $725,000 and the appraised value comes in at $700,000 in a normal market, at that point you would negotiate. You would get with the seller and see if you guys can meet in the middle, or ask the seller to bring the purchase price down to the appraised value, or some combination thereof. So you would talk about it. In this market, most sellers are getting multiple offers. Sometimes there's a lot of cash offers, so you don't even need to worry about an appraisal. So if you're in a situation where you're making a financed offer and it's going to be contingent upon an appraisal, you want to give that seller some confidence that if for whatever reason that appraisal comes in a little bit low, you'll still be able to close. And what you can do is add a clause, a special term in your offer that says if the appraisal comes in low, the buyer is willing to pay X amount of dollars above the appraised value to close. And what that means is that buyer would have to come up with additional cash. And what we're going to do next is break down a situation with the actual numbers and what that looks like. But what you're going to need to do is, if you are required to put a certain amount down in a down payment, you would have to bring in additional cash above that down payment, that required down payment of 10, 20, 30%, whatever it is, to close the difference between the appraised value and the agreed upon sales price. And so what it does is it requires that buyer to have additional cash available, right? So if you're putting all the cash that you have down as your down payment to fulfill that minimum down payment amount required by your lender, and you don't have any additional cash, this is a hard thing to commit to. But if you do have additional cash and you are willing to pay $10, $20, $30, $40,000 over the appraised value, you can add that clause in to make your offer stronger and give that seller some confidence. So it's good for the seller also, because that seller can have confidence that if the appraised value comes in a little bit low, you're not gonna then renegotiate at that point, or the deal won't fall apart because you have enough cash to bring in and pay above the appraised value. So what we're going to do next is we're going to break it down, take a look at all of the different numbers, and give you an idea of what that actually looks like. All right, here we go, getting into the numbers of this whole situation. So in this scenario, again, every situation is going to be specific, but this is one example, and you'd have to look into your specific situation to see what the exact numbers are going to be. But in this situation, we're talking about a $725,000 purchase price and a 10% down payment required by the loan program that the buyer is doing. So what that means is that on that purchase price, they're going to need $72,500 down, right? That 10% down payment is going to be required to close on this specific loan program. So in this situation, the appraised price comes in at $700,000. So there's a $25,000 shortfall. And in this case, you're still going to be required to provide that 10% down, right? Only it's going to be $70,000 down. It's not going to be $72,500. It's going to be $70,000, because that's the 10% of the appraised value. And that's what the bank is going to loan money on, right? The bank is going to loan money on the appraised value, not the purchase price. And so what this means is, in this situation, in a normal market, you would now negotiate with that seller and say, well, hey, the appraisal came in $25,000 low. Let's bring the purchase price down. Let's split the difference, or maybe I'll come up with some additional cash, and a $10,000, you come down $15,000. You can negotiate at this point and talk about it. In a hot market, the seller is going to say, go fly a kite. There's 10 other buyers behind you that will come in with another offer, and there may be a cash buyer at this point. And so you, as a buyer, using your appraisal waiver clause that you've committed to, can now look at what your additional cash is going to be. And this is the important situation that you want to look at prior to making this offer and committing to appraisal waiver clause is how much cash do I have to come up with and what can I cover if the appraisal comes in low. So in this situation, if the appraisal comes in low at 700, you have a shortfall of $25,000. And what that means is you need additional cash of $22,500, right? Because you have this $2,500 up here that you don't need to put down towards your 10% down payment. You can put that down here towards the additional cash that you have to close. And so you have to come up with an additional $22,500 to cover that $25,000 gap. So if you could commit to that additional $25,000, you would put that in your appraisal waiver clause that says, I'm going to pay $25,000 over the appraised value. But now what that means is you have to come up with that $70,000 plus that 25 or plus this 22.5, and so you're really going to need to come up with $92,500. So that's going to be your total amount of cash out of pocket that you're going to need to close. And so you want to examine the situation and make sure that you are comfortable coming up with the additional cash to cover what you're committing to pay over the appraised value. And that's why if you're doing like a really low down payment loan, a VA loan, or a USDA loan where you're only putting a couple of percent down, and then you're saying, well, I'll pay $100,000 over the appraised value, it doesn't have a lot of credibility because you're not coming up with any cash to begin with. And maybe you do in fact have the cash, but you should show that if you're going to put this type of clause into your offer and tell a seller that, hey, I'm willing to pay over the appraised value. So again, nobody wants to pay over the appraised value, but in a hot market when prices are going up faster than the market is following it up, and an appraiser is using comps from months ago that may not reflect what the market is doing now, and you as a buyer, like we talked about last week, you want to get in now before prices continue to go up and interest rates go up in the future, you may want to use a clause like this to make your offer stronger and make your offer more competitive. But just understand what you're committing to and make sure that you can fulfill that commitment, because now you're contractually bound to pay more than the appraised value. And that's why it's good to put a cap in there sometimes, because if you don't have unlimited funds to come up with, and hey, say the appraisal comes in $50,000 under the purchase price, you want to make sure you have that cash available. If you only have 20 or only have 25, that's what you want to put into your appraisal waiver clause in your contract. So again, talk to your lender about this, talk to your realtor about this, make sure you fully understand what you're committing to, but it is a very good tool to use to make your offer stronger if the situation is right. And you want to make sure that you're doing it in a way that you can fulfill your obligation that you are committing to. So if you have any questions, as always, you can put them in the comments below or email me at dylan@buybigisland.com. Please like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're on YouTube, and I always appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you guys next week. Aloha.